This is unfortunate. I recorded most of that how to circle video again, and I think my camera battery died, so I don't know where I left off, so I'm gonna have to go restart this. Here it is again. I'm remaking the how to circle video because the first one that I made was old footage that I kind of just voiced over, and I was just barely getting to like the tight idle circles, so I didn't have a lot of good explanation, I guess, towards it. Now I have a little more experience, I can get into it a little more. I'm gonna try and speed through this so this battery doesn't die again. I'll go into the first kind of the preliminary things. You don't need an idle adjuster necessarily for this, but I like to run it right now at around like 3.25. I haven't experimented with higher end circles yet. I want to raise it a little bit so I can completely take my throttle hand off, but it's not necessary. You can kind of modulate throttle the same way. Some of the beginning things. PSI, I recommend wide recon circles first. Some people say do it in a tight area. It forces you to dip quicker. I learned this way. I like it. I think it worked very well for me. So for wide recons, I started around 10 PSI. I think it's pretty good there because it doesn't automatically throw you into the dip. You can kind of keep it nice and wide, work on your rotations, work on the handbrake, body position, all that stuff, and not kind of get too worried about dipping in, immediately. Positioning, you can do double back peg, you can do seat sander. If you're going to circle to the left, this is the best position for me. I found that to be the most comfortable. If you circle to the right, it's this way. The first thing I would do is, if you're comfortable in seat stander or double back pegger, straight line that, get it as slow as you can, get close to the idle. Circles, you're really slow. You're not, you can't really be chasing them to get super tight circles. So first, focus on that. Get your straight line double back peg or seat stander nice and slow, close to that idle. That's your first thing. Next thing, when you start to get into circles, whatever position you're going to start to, practice in, do a couple straight line clutch ups with that. So, this way, it's kind of like a fake knee knocker, but get your foot there. I like to start on the seat. It's a little more stable. Clutch up like this a couple times in straight line before you really try and dip it in a circle, just so you know how it feels. That's what I like to do when I'm trying out any new position on the bike. Just straight line it a few times before I kind of get into anything. And then when you're ready to start your circles, obviously you need a handbrake. You want to be covering both of them like that. You get in your wide area, get ready to go. Then you'll get into position and then clutch it up and just look where you want to go and focus on completing a single rotation. That's what you want to do right here. And if you need to use up all the space, you use up all the space. This is what you want to do. And after you get a single one, try and do more. Try and go for 5 in a row, 10 in a row. And that's kind of like the process you want to start in the beginning, is just focus on the wide ones. You want to learn your body position, just kind of some of the basics, body position, looking where you want to go, kind of all that stuff. Just start with the wide ones. You don't have to go immediately into the dips and go super tight on idle. I tried to do that with sit-down circles. It led to a lot of frustration because you don't really get far. What you're going to have is you're probably going to only make it maybe a quarter of the way, and you got to put it down because it feels like you're going to high side, you're going to run out of room, or maybe make it halfway the circle. And you'll find in the beginning that you start to hit these walls where it's just like, oh, I can't make it more than 3/4 of the way of the circle. And there's a couple things that'll probably cause that. First is body position. You always want your weight towards the inside, especially when you're in a nice tight one. Once it starts to favor the outside, that's where you'll come out of the circle. Too much brake is the second thing. Brake is not your friend when it comes to circles. You want to use as little brake as possible. You'll notice if you use a lot of brake when you're trying to carry a circle, you'll feel like you're going to high side. That's going to happen a lot. So you'll want to use it a lot in the beginning because it's uncomfortable. You feel like you're going to fall. It's understandable, but you really want to focus on using less and less until it's almost like you're barely using it except for just when you need it. And then the third thing is the bike's not tall enough. The bike's going to want to dip the farther back you go. So, you know, if you can't cut the circle tight enough, you're going to have to, you know, blip a little throttle, drop it back a little bit, and it'll want to dip around. And you kind of like experiment with that. You don't want to, you know, dump a whole bunch, because that's just going to lead to a bad day or whatever. So start with your wide ones like this. Get one down. That's all you want to do first. That's your first big goal. And then once you get one, get like 5, get 10 in a row. Just get as many as you can to where you're comfortable with it. Like, you know, you can crack out a bunch of these. Then move to the next part of the lot. So for me, I moved here. I actually was down at the end because I could cheat and use the concrete if I needed to. Move to the next part of the lot. And you're going to repeat the process. You're going to clutch up and pretty much stay as wide as you can. You know, I'll try and use all 3 lanes here. And I'm making like an oval right now. But to stay wider, you can kind of push the bike away from your body, like I'm doing right now. And it's the same thing with sit-down circles, where I did that as well. And you just kind of repeat that. Get your 1 circle in the tighter area, then, you know, go for 5. You know, 5. I mean, 10's kind of going to be a lot. You'll probably get pretty tired with that. So you move to a tighter area, and I like to clutch up facing different ways. So maybe this way, or the opposite way, just so you're not staring at the same thing the entire time. You know, you're looking at different boundaries, I guess, and just to mix it up, so you kind of get comfortable with clutching up anywhere, as opposed to just doing it in the same spot over and over. You know, like I said, knowing those 3 like fundamental things, where like using less brake, taller the bike is, the more it's going to want to dip, and body position, you can kind of you'll eventually work into tighter circles. You'll find it dips, and you'll be like, oh shit, and you'll kind of push away and get out of it, and then you repeat that, and you'll find that dip again, and it'll carry you for a little bit longer. And it's just, circles are a pain in the ass. It's just repetitive. You know, you keep clutching up until you get comfortable with finding that dip immediately, and then you can kind of keep it, you know, as tight as you want. So right now I'm using almost negligible amounts of brake and just kind of letting the idle carry me. So it almost stalled there, and that's where like clutch work is kind of important. And I haven't really gotten too in depth into it because I haven't had a full summer to work on that yet. It's almost January now, but that's kind of like where I'm at, and getting it nice and tight like that, and that's kind of where you want to be. That's almost no brake, letting the idle carry you around. I found if it's gonna dip in too much, I can lean into the bars, and that kind of keeps it from completely falling over. I don't know what else there is with circles, really. It's just kind of a repetitive pain in the ass type of thing, you know? Start with your wide recons, move to a tighter area, and then kind of just focus on getting as tight as possible. When you're doing the wide recons, you don't really have to worry about the dip. You're just kind of looking where you want to go and kind of steering it along. And the slower you go, the easier it is to steer and kind of manipulate. I think I covered everything, you know. Don't use a lot of brake. Keep it tall. That'll help you dip. Keep the body weight to the inside. You know, and just kind of work wide and then come in tighter and tighter, you know, as you progress. And it's gonna take a long time. You're gonna make it halfway, and you're gonna feel like you're gonna high side and throw it out, and that's gonna happen a lot. You're gonna have a lot of lot sessions where you don't, you know, you're not doing a lot of circles right away, and that's kind of how the process is. And eventually you'll get to where you can kind of keep it within one of these lanes or whatever. And you know, I'm not too advanced yet to where I can keep them stupid tight, but I guess the one thing I'll mention is PSI. I'm running close to 20 now, and I think like 22 is like a sweet spot. So after you do your wide ones and you kind of come into the tighter, you could probably keep it at like 10, 12 for this width, like the full width here. But once you really want to get into the tighter ones, where you're, you know, within this type of area, that's where you want to boost it to like 20, 22. It'll feel so much smoother. It'll dip quicker, but the circles will be so much smoother for you. That's kind of what you want to get to. I don't think there's anything else. I'll probably go through and edit this and be like, oh man, I forgot to talk about this. But if there still are more questions, please ask them in the comments. You know, I'll always respond to those. And if I forget something really big or when I learn something new, I'll, you know, throw up another video, because you're always learning stuff, so it's never stays the same. That's about all I got for you.
Hottest stash in the carpet. Yeah, we trapping out apartments. I ain't done when you start shit. To be